business landscape, customers demand the higher standards, and companies that fail to meet those standards risk falling behind and losing business. Welcome to Nexus Consultancy. We have dedicated over 15 years in helping businesses to implement ISO management systems for improved quality, compliance, operational excellence, and customer satisfaction. Our company's purpose is simple, which is to empower business and people. Our team of experts work closely with our customers to access their needs and create customized solutions that meet their specific requirements. We conduct thorough audits and evaluations to identify areas for improvement and help our customers implement changes that drive success. Our consultants have extensive experience and serve over 2,000 customers, and we stay up to date with the latest industry trends and best practices. Whether you're a small business just starting out or a large corporation looking to improve your operations, Nexus Consultancy is here to help you optimize your operations, increase profits, and achieve your business goals.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to our webinar on anti-bribery in ESG, best practices and compliance. I'm your speaker today, Patient from Nexus Consultancy. Today, we will expose how anti-bribery measures fits within the governance pillar of ESG and the role that standards like ISO 37001 play in ensuring compliance and promoting ethical compliance. In today's session, we will be covering two main sections. First section will be an introduction to ESG and how governance tie into anti-bribery efforts. Section 2 will be a framework that directly links to the governance aspect of ESG. So this particularly, we were focusing on the compliance requirements. So to begin, let's dive into what ESG stands for and how governance play a crucial role. So ESG stands for environment, social, and governance. Environment is the impact to the environment, including the carbon emission, waste management, resources usage, and energy efficiency. While social is to manage the relationship with the employee, supplier, customer, and community, including the issue like labor right, diversity, and community impact. The last one which is governance. So governance is the main topic of today, G. So governance is the internal system and control, including the leadership, executive pay, audit, and anti-corruption measure, and shareholder right. So today's topic, we will deep dive into the G in the ESG governance. So governance is the backbone of a company ESG strategy. It ensures the leadership and the internal control align with ethical practice, and effective governance is vital for preventing corruption and fostering transparency. This includes a board structure and diversity. For instance, companies should have a well-functioning diverse board that reflect a variety of perspectives. Next one, compliance and auditing. Compliance and auditing involve in regular audit and adherence to regulation, preventing corruption and ensuring operational integrity. And lastly, ethical decision making. Leadership should foster a culture of ethical behavior, accountability, and transparency. So, why the governance is so important? A good governance can ensure a transparency, integrity, and accountability within an organization. By disclosing accurate and timely information, the company can uphold an ethical standard and minimize the risk like fraud or bribery. So transparency. So what does it mean, transparency? So transparency basically is a well-governance company disclose an accurate and timely information about their operation, finance, and sustainability efforts. And integrity is ensure that the ethical standards are upheld across the organization, minimize the risk like fraud, bribery, and corruption. Lastly, accountability. So accountability is basically hold an executive and board accountable for their action, creating a system of check and balance that safeguard the stakeholder interests. So how anti-bribery measures align with all these ESG principles? Anti-bribery measures are an integral part of a governance pillar in ESG. By adopting robust anti-bribery policy, the company can promote ethical business practice. For instance, anti-bribery measures ensure that company engage in a fair presentation and maintain a trust with the stakeholder. Also, enhance the transparency. So, preventing bribery and corruption can strengthen the transparency in decision making. Also, with this anti-bribery measure, also can help to mitigate the risk. So, company with a strong anti-bribery policy will reduce their legal and reputational risk, protecting their long-term value. Lastly, these ESG principles is actually aligned with the global standard. So anti-bribery practice reflect a company commitment to the international norm and regulations such as ISO 37001 or United Nations Convention Against Corruption. And bribery actually can have a significant economic and reputational consequences, particularly for the ESG-focused organization. One of the biggest consequences, one of the biggest impact for the bribery on ESG goal will be the legal consequence. So company that caught engaging in a bribery face fine, sanctions, and legal battles, which can have a severe impact to the financial performance. And then loss of investor confidence. Of course, if let's say when your company is exposed to the bribery scandals, the investor are actually can result in investor pulling out, leading to a drop in the share price or capitals. Lastly, the most importantly is the bribery will actually damage to the company reputations. So bribery scandal can cause irreparable harms to a company reputation, reducing customer loyalty and damaging relationship with stakeholder. So let's take a look on the global picture. Transparency, any one of you heard about Transparency Internationals? So Transparency International Corruption Perception Index range country based on perceived level of public sector corruption. And this index provide a valuable insight into the risk of doing business in different regions and highlight the importance of anti-bribery measures. And each country rated with the grade ranging from 0, so which means 0 is the highly corrupted, to 100. 100 is very clean, which means they are very clean according to the survey conducted. So let's take a guess of what is the rank in Malaysia. So I will open a poll right now. So let's take a guess on how clean is Malaysia. Yeah, so wait. Sorry, I have. Wait, yeah. Okay, so I have launched a poll in the chat. So can anyone take a guess? What do you think about Malaysia ranking on the CPI out of 180 countries? Yeah, okay, we have a massive response from the participants today, which is very good. Thank you for your participation. So yeah, maybe I will end the poll in 2 seconds. Yeah. Oh, so actually out of the poll, I think we have 76% of people rated 57, which is Malaysia is 57. And we have 90% of people is rate Malaysia is 100. Okay, so let's review the answer. So according to the CPI's index in 2023, the result, the top 5 countries is Denmark, Finland, New Zealand, Norway, and Singapore. And Malaysia ranked 57 out of 180 countries. So congrats those that guessed it correctly. Okay, yeah. So next one, we move on to section 2, which is the framework that directly linked to the governance aspect of ESG. So anyone of you familiar with MACC Amendment Act 2018? And do you know what is that? You can feel free to drop a yes or no in the chat box so that I know whether you know, whether you're aware on this MACC Amendment Act or not. Yeah. So what is MACC Amendment Act? Oh, okay. So in Malaysia, the 2018 amendment to the MACC Act introduced the corporate liability for corruption offense. Okay, so basically this act introduced the corporate liability for corruption that enable the commercial organization and associate person to be subjected to legal proceeding should be the person associated with the commercial organization commit to corruption offense. So in another word, accordingly to this act, it mentioned that when an offense is committed by a commercial organization, the commercial organization director, controller, or official partner, or any member in the management of the commercial organization affair will be deemed to have committed to an offense. Okay. Unless it can be proven that the offense was committed without the person consent and due diligence to prevent the commission of offense was exercised. So basically, under this section 17A, holds the company responsible for corrupt activity carried out by associate person, such as director or employee, unless the company can demonstrate that it had implemented the adequate procedure. So the keyword is adequate procedure, okay, to prevent such behavior. And the penalty can be severe, with potential fine up to 10 times of the sum of gratification involved. Okay. Yeah. So the 10 times of the sum of gratification involved, which means the fine can up to 10 times of the amount of the bribe or imprison of the key individuals. So what is commercial organization? So according to section 17A, a commercial organization can include a company incorporated in Malaysia, any company formed under Company Act 2016, including local or multinational company that operate within Malaysia, or a foreign company operating in Malaysia, or a company that is incorporated outside Malaysia but conduct business or part of its business in Malaysia. So all these companies, as mentioned in the act just now, you are required to have in place of adequate procedure to prevent the person associated with the commercial organization from undertaking such conduct. And what is associated person? So who are associated person under this section 17A? So this include not only employee, but also a third party such as contractors, agent acting on behalf of the company. It is essential to have control in place to monitor and mitigate the risk posed by this external entity. For example, let's say today, I employed a security guard to pay bribe to whoever. Then this will be the bribe under the organization. Okay, clear? Or today, I engage a law firm for a legal service and I pay them above the market rate. They might be paid bribe on the company behalf, but they are not employed by the company. So third party can be represent a considerable bribery risk for a company. Okay. And this is the first case of an offense under Section 17A of MSCC Act 2009, where a director was prosecuted for bribing a company to secure a vessel charter subcontractor worth 1 billion. This case highlights the importance of anti-bribery policy to avoid legal ramifications. So, what is considered bribe? Often as people always ask, is advantage equals to bribe? So do you think advantage is equals to bribe? You can feel free to drop a yes or no in the chat box. So do you think advantage is equals to bribe? Yeah. When consider whether an advantage is a bribe, it depends, is there any service in returns or seen as a goodwill? By right, the activity will not create any obligation or expectation on the recipient. So whether an advantage is constituted as a bribe, one must be considered objectively. So you need to ask, was the gift made with a legitimate purpose, or what is the purpose of the benefit? Is the value proportionate? The value and the frequency of the benefit. How often is that? Is it every day you receive this kind of benefit, or the value is beyond what you should receive? Yeah. And then was it offered transparently? So was it offered transparently, which means, is this offered under table or in a secret commission, or it is transparent, being documented down that everyone aware on it? Okay. Does it seek to unduly influence the recipients? So with this gift or this advantage, will it influence the recipient on certain decision or making the decision? Okay, so when consider whether an advantage is equals to bribe, these are the 5 key questions that we should always think of. So, are these offering corrupt? Are these offering equals to corruptions? So what do you think? Yeah. Yes. So I have responded, say yes. How about others? It depends. Yes. Yeah. So we need to consider all of this was given openly and transparently, properly recorded in the given book or record. So for example, is the hamper gift being recorded? depends on the amount and approval from management, and also some say half yes, half no. Yeah. So basically, when we want to see whether these offering are considered corrupt, so basically we need to consider all these are given openly or transparently. Is it properly recorded down in the giver book or record or not? So gift, hot and hospitality and travel expenses are higher risk area for bribery and have figured in a large number of bribery cases. And they are troubling for company to manage, as most laws do not define the boundary, while in many society, they are deep-rooted custom relating gift and hospitality. Therefore, we need to have best practice guidelines where they are transparent, proportionate, reasonably. So if the company follow this approach, such as expenditures are unlikely to be criticized by stakeholder or considered an offense by authority. Yeah. However, company must ensure that they have implemented adequate procedure or policy and tested their design against stakeholder expectation and applicable law. Yeah. So what is the bribery for main party? So generally, in any business related to bribery transaction, there are 4 main parties. So basically, the briber, the bribed person, and their respective organization. While it is not always the case, these organizations are sometimes a direct victim of the bribery. So for example, taking an example, the government agency that overpay for a service as part of the kickback scheme, or the private organization that enter into a contract on an unfavorable term as a result of this action of the briber or the bribed person. There are many. They may also be many indirect victims, including individuals who suffer where funds are diverted from the public services and law-abiding business that miss out on the contract because they refuse to pay the bribe. So basically, we have 5 types of bribery. So first is kickback, secret commission, facilitation payment, influencer peddling, and electoral bribery. So any one of you in this webinar, do you know what is this 5 types of bribery? Yeah. So we have kickback. So kickback is basically in return for securing a contract, a portion of the profit is kicked back to the person making the decision. And secret commission is basically when an agent or an intermediary influence contract without the knowledge of their principal, accepting the payment of this service, which means under table secretly. Okay. And then facilitation payment, this is a grease payment are made to the government official to expedite the process. And influence peddling is where someone use their influence, often in the politics, to secure advantage for someone else in exchange for the payment. And lastly, electoral bribery. So electoral bribery is basically donating with an intent to influence election outcome or gain future business contract. So each form of this bribery present a unique challenges for the business trying to stay compliant with the bribery law. Okay, so in earlier today, we mentioned about MACC Act, right? That mentioned that adequate procedure. Okay, so pursuing to the Section 17A of Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission Act 2009, so the Prime Minister Department has actually issued a guideline for this adequate procedure to prevent the person associated with a commercial organization from undertaking this corruption practice. And this guideline of adequate procedure outline the 5 guiding principles of trust. So to comply with Section 17A, the starting point would be formulate and implement policy and procedure, program, and control around the trust principles. So what is the first trust principle T? So the principle number 1, which is T, refer to the responsibility of top-level management to ensure that commercial organizations are essentially practice the highest level of integrity and ethics. So who is the top-level management? Often we will ask, oh, who is the top level management? So the top level management refer to the person who is the organization directors, controllers, official, or partner, or who is concerned in the management of its affairs. So for the top level commitment, what can we do? So basically we can do director, partner, or anyone concerned in the management of the organization affair ought to be directly involved to ensure the organization comply to the applicable anti-corruption law and regulation. A tone must be made by the top, need to set by the top. For example, establish an anti-bribery policy. So do your company currently have anti-bribery policy? Yeah. And then promote a culture of integrity. Ensure the policy are communicated internally and externally. Encourage the employee to speak up. Have an appropriate line of authority, and then implement audit risk assessment, which are reported to the top management and act upon. So basically, the first principle T, top level commitment, this is what top management can be set. Next one, we move on to R. So principles number 2, recommend that a comprehensive risk assessment is done and reviewed periodically. So risk assessment. So risk assessment are ought to conducted at regular intervals to identify evolving risk of corruption. The finding of these assessments should be documented and reviewed regularly. So what are we trying to identify throughout this risk assessment? So basically what we can identify is the weak spot of your organization governance. So you need to identify in your organization, which are the weak spots. Is it in the HR side? Is it in the finance side? Yeah. And then transaction that could be a cover for corrupt the payment, and whether the company carry out the activity in the country or the sector with higher corruption risk. So this one we can refer back to the CPI just now. So if, for example, let's say today you want to do a business in Finland. So you want to see whether Finland, is it high, their corruption risk, is it high or low? Yeah, so you can refer to that as a guidance as well. Okay, and then non-compliant of external party acting on behalf of the organization, relationship with the business partner associate which may expose to the organization to corruption. Okay, next one, we talk about principle number 3, which is U. So principle number 3 is basically we need to have a undertaking control measure. Appropriate contingency measure which include due diligence and stringent financial control to be addressed corruption risk identified ought to be in place. We need to establish a due diligence procedure and policy. And then we need to set up a whistleblowing platform and implement the policy which can address conflict of interest, give entertainment and hospitality, donation, management and improvement of an anti-corruption framework, and lastly is documentation and implementation of adequate procedure. So the organization should conduct the due diligence on its personnel, business, and associate, and in particular on business activity where there is significant exposure to the bribery and corruption risk. And also for the due diligence process, it should actually aim at obtaining sufficient information in order to assess if there are any bribery risks posed by this party or not. And it is important for the organization to know who is it working with, whether is it personnel, business associate, or any party to work for and on behalf of the organization. The last two principles, which is on the S. So for the S which is principles number 4. So principle number 4 is basically systematic review, monitoring, and enforcement. So under these principles, the organization need to consider whether is it external audit is being done by a qualified and independent third party, because this will help to obtain assurance that the organization is operating in a compliance with its policy and procedure in relation to corruption. So systematic review, monitoring, and enforcement. So for this one, the effectiveness and efficiency of the anti-bribery practice program ought to be regularly reviewed and assessed. So what can be done from here? So basically, we can conduct and ensure regular review in our implementation of our monitoring program. And we can identify a competent person to actually perform an internal audit or engage third party to do audit to our organization. We also can evaluate the anti-corruption policy to see how effective is that. Okay, and lastly, on internal investigation and disciplinary proceeding. So we can review on this as well. On the last principles, which is on principles number 5, we emphasize on training and communications. So under these principles number 5, so what can we do? So basically, the organization anti-corruption policy should be made available and communicate to all personnel and business associates. And the commercial organization should provide its employee and business associate with adequate training to ensure through that they are thoroughly understand of the organization anti-corruption position. So the organization anti-corruption policy not only ought to be disseminated both internally and externally, but regular and relevant training can be provided to the organization member and external stakeholder. Yeah. So that they know how to identify the bribery risk. First, the company need to really understand what are their bribery risks. In every company, those bribery risks are different, and the program of education about the anti-bribery should be built around those particular bribery risks. During the training, to provide practical example that employee of that organization can understand and make sense to them that can relate to their day-to-day job. Okay, so with that, they have explained just now for the trust principles, top-level commitments, risk assessment, undertaking control measures, systematic review, monitoring and enforcement, training and communication. Maybe we can launch a poll to see if your existing anti-bribery practice align with these trust principles. Yeah, give me a second to launch a poll. Yeah. So is your existing anti-bribery practice aligned with the trust principles that I explained just now? Yeah. So the floor, you can read it. Yeah. So from the poll that I shared, so actually half of you is actually not sure about your existing anti-bribery practice aligned with the trust principles, and some of you are rated no, which means your company anti-bribery practice is not aligned with trust principles. Yeah. So no worry, let us guide you through how you can demonstrating this etiquette procedure. Okay. So how you can demonstrating this etiquette procedure. So basically, you can demonstrate this etiquette procedure through the ISO 37001 anti-bribery management system. So, I mean, in this webinar, any one of you heard before what is ISO 37001? Do you know what is ISO 37001? No. Yeah. So basically, ISO 37001 is anti-bribery management system. So it is the ISO standard, same like your ISO 9001, ISO 14 and 45001. Okay, so this standard is actually provide a framework for your organization to build a robust anti-bribery management system. And the principle of this trust that I mentioned earlier, right, is actually aligned closely with the requirement of ISO 37001. Okay, making it an effective tool for your organization to demonstrating compliance and defending against the liability under the anti-bribery law. Okay, so just now we mentioned trust principles or trust requirement. So the first principle is top level commitment. So how ISO 37001 ABMS requirement demonstrate the top level commitment? So we have the clauses like top management leadership commitment and responsibility. We also the clauses requirement like governing body oversight. And then for the risk assessment, second principles, in ISO 37001, is also required you to conduct a bribery risk assessment to assess the bribery risk in your organization. So with ISO 37001 bribery risk assessment, it complies to the principles of risk assessment part. And then the third principles undertake control measures. So how ISO 37001 match with this undertake control measures? So in ISO 37001, we have due diligence on project and business associate. We also required to establish an anti-bribery policy and procedure and control. And then systematic review, monitoring, and enforcement, these principles. So in 37001, we also required to have management review in yearly basis. And then we will have corrective action and continuous improvement. And also we will have reporting, monitoring, and investigation. Let's say today there's a bribery cases happen in your organization, you are required to do investigation. And lastly, for training and communication. So how ISO 37001 align with this training and communication? So basically in ISO 37001, you are required to conduct anti-bribery training and awareness at regular basis. Okay, so this is how your company can adopting this ISO 37001 to comply the trust requirements or adequate procedure stated in the MACC Act. Okay, so ISO 37001 is designed to help the organization to establish and implement and maintain and review and improve the anti-bribery management system, and it only applicable to bribery only. Yeah, so those just now that did not heard before what is ISO 37001, so here you go. Yeah, so basically it is international recognized good practice and specific the requirement for bribery. Okay. Yeah. So how ISO 37001 ABMS help in your organization? So the core focus for this ISO 37001 can help you to prevent and detect and respond to bribery. So prevent, how is prevent? Prevent through a robust internal control, due diligence, and risk assessment. Okay. How is help you to detect your bribery case? So it will detect while via constant monitoring and auditing process to ensure transparency in business operation. And lastly, respond. So by implementing reporting mechanism, investigating suspicious activity, and taking corrective action when necessary, it will help you to respond to all the bribery related cases. Okay, so how are we going to start with this ISO 37001? So we can start to establish an anti-bribery policy and objective, define the role and responsibility, communicate and training, conduct the risk assessment and due diligence on project and business associate, and implement financial and commercial control. And lastly, institute the reporting and investigation procedure. Okay, so lastly, may the G force with you and start with anti-bribery today. So don't forget our topic today is governance. So may the governance force with you and start the anti-bribery today. So let's conclude by emphasizing that a corruption-free business is not only about compliance, it's about building trust with the stakeholder and ensuring sustainable long-term success. So by focusing on governance, particularly on anti-bribery measure, company can improve their ESG performance and create a solid foundation for growth. So as we wrap up, I have 6 key takeaways for our webinar today. So for the first key takeaway is remember our trust principles. Yeah. So like I mentioned, the first thing first is to establish a robust anti-bribery policy. And then with the trust principles, we need to have a leadership commitment, strong leadership commitment, top management commitment to our anti-bribery. And then conduct a regular risk assessment to identify what is the weak spot in your organization and perform a thorough third-party due diligence. Engage in continuous monitoring and improvement. And lastly, prioritize your training and communication within your organization to let your employee, your relevant stakeholder to recognize the bribery risk, so that they are aware. So by adopting this practice, your organization will be better equipped to meet anti-bribery compliance requirements and align with ESG principles. So a corruption-free business fosters trust, strengthen the governance, and ensure sustainable growth. So start your ESG journey today by combating the bribery. Okay, so yeah. So thank you for your attention throughout this webinar. So I would like to open the floor to any question that you may have about the anti-bribery practices or ISO 37001 or how this strategy can be implemented within your ESG framework. So anyone, you have any question, you are feel free to post in the meeting chat. Yeah, so if let's say do not have any questions, then we will move on. Yeah. So in Nexus Consultancy, we believe that the effective of anti-bribery practice are crucial for any business that aim to maintain its integrity and protect its reputation. So hence, we are offering a free 30 minutes anti-bribery consultation today to all the participant today. So you may scan the QR code on the screen now to claim your free anti-bribery consultation and take the first step towards securing your organization against bribery risk. Okay, remember, strong anti-bribery controls not only protects your business legally, but also enhance your ESG profile. Yeah, that creating a long-term business. Okay, so anyone who is interested, you may scan the QR code on the screen. Okay, so yeah, so if let's say you are interested, you can scan the QR code in the on the screen. Okay. So I also excited to invite you to an upcoming live webinar that hosted by our company, which is the ISO implementation challenges and technological solutions for success. So this is a fantastic opportunity for the organizations that striving for the ISO certification, or for those that already certified but facing operational challenges. So join us on 16th of October, 2 to 3 p.m. Where we will deep dive into the implementation hurdles and introduce innovative technological solutions that can streamline the process, boost compliance, and ensure lasting operational excellence. Okay. So thank you everyone once again for your participation today. So yeah, so do follow us. Yeah, so thanks for coming. Okay, thank you everyone.